What is up, everybody? Welcome back to GT Online, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Declasse Tulip M-100, which funnily enough I could not figure out what this car was actually based on, but it turns out it is going to be a Chevrolet Malibu, which I do believe is from like the 80s or something like that, but overall I would say this car definitely does look pretty awesome. I would say it's primarily going to be like a drag car of some sort because those back tires are pretty dang big, and the overall design of this thing definitely looks pretty dang sweet. And now moving right over to the customization of the Tulip here, so jumping into this with the armor. Then we have the brakes, moving over to the bumpers now. So there's going to be a couple of these you can do. So you could get rid of the plate if you would like to, which actually looks pretty awesome on there. And luckily in the GTA universe, you can't get away without having a plate on the car because none of the laws are actually going to matter on there. But for me, guys, I'm probably going to have to go with the smooth bumper. I think that does look pretty sweet on there. Then moving over to the rear bumpers now, we have the smooth, we have the flush again, and the drag chute. That actually looks pretty awesome on this thing considering it is a drag car. Honestly, I might have to add this to the vehicle because that looks pretty sweet, so let's add that. Then moving over to the engine now, let's max it out. Brings the acceleration all the way up. Moving over to the exhaust now, we're going to have the slash cut exhaust there. Then we have the race. Then we have the slash cut after that, and then the big bore, kind of like that one a bit. Then we have the side exit exhaust, which actually kind of like that one as well. Let's add the titanium. Then we have the side exit like right by the front fenders. Looks pretty cool. Then we have the titanium there as well. Then moving over to the front fenders now, you guys can add the trim to it. To be honest, I really don't like how that looks on it. Even though like the fenders stick out a little bit too much on there. I would say the trim looks a little bit weird. Moving over to the grill now though. So the ridged, then we have the smooth. Then we have the mesh one, primary, and then the turbo, which is definitely going to look pretty insane. But for me, I did end up picking the smooth grill on this car. Now, I will show you guys here in one quick second why I didn't pick the turbo grill. But moving over to the headlight covers now, there's only a few of these, so you can basically cover them completely, I believe. Then also, wow, look at that. That looks interesting. So if you guys do want to drive at nighttime, probably something you will want to avoid. Here are the hoods right now, though. So there's going to be 12 of these, basically 11 other ones. And I would say most of these actually look pretty insane. Like, look at that. My goodness. Definitely going to be one of the craziest looking drag cars in the game, I would say. Like, my goodness, look at that engine. Bruh. Then we have the large filter, oval, triple after that, and then finally, guys, the one I'm going to go with, blown by twins, which honestly is a very weird way to name that. Like, my goodness, no one take that the wrong way. But moving over to the next part is going to be the lights here, which obviously in the Arena Workshop, you guys can throw some crazy ones on the car if you would like to. But now let's go take a look at the liveries for this car here. So starting off here with the black center stripes, which unfortunately, guys, the color of my vehicle, it's kind of hard to see that there. Then we have the white one, then we have the black double, then we have the white, then the black M100, and then blue. That looks pretty sweet on there. Then we have the white two-tone. I would say most of these liveries actually look pretty dope. So for this car, instead of me painting it a certain color, I did want to actually throw on one of the liveries. I think the racing one here does look pretty sweet because it gives it like a rustic feel. I really do feel like it does fit the car pretty nicely. But then we have the oval racer. Then after that we have the hot ring throwback, and then finally the last one after that. So I would say a lot of the liveries for this car are definitely going to be pretty awesome. And then I also wanted to show you guys the colors I will be running on this car as well because I really do feel like it fits it very nicely. So in primary is going to be the regular classic black color, which is the one I did order the car in. And then the secondary color is going to be a cast iron silver color here in metallic. I would say that's by far going to be the best way. And then for trim, I also left this as graphite as well. I feel like it really does fit it the best this way. But moving over to the next thing is going to be the roll cage. So we have the half cage. And then moving over to first person view to actually see how the cage is going to look, the dash dodger. We have the full cage, half cage, then we have the full one, then full cage and carbon seats I would say is going to look pretty nuts. So it's kind of cool the fact that you can change the seats in the car. I personally am not a big fan of carbon seats like that, so for me guys, I'm probably going to do the half cage in the car. But moving down now to the roof here, so you could do a half vinyl and a full vinyl, and I'm honestly not really feeling that all that much. But if you are going for like a classic feel, I would say that might fit the car pretty nicely. And if you guys were to sell this vehicle, you're looking at around $1,076,000. So you will be losing like over $500,000 on this car if you did want to sell it. Here are the skirts right now, so for that you guys will see the regular trim on there. Moving down to the bottom of the piece being removed, which honestly I kind of like how that one looks on there. Then you can also remove the entire side piece as well, which will get rid of the deflectors in the front. I would say that one does look pretty awesome as well. It kind of gives the car more of like a crazy looking look, and or I guess like a racing look for that matter. But moving down now to the spoilers, so there's going to be 15 of these you can add to the vehicle. I'm probably going to go with the low one on there because I kind of like how that fits the car. And then moving down the list here, I would say many of these wings don't really look bad on the car, but I would say something like that is a little too big for this. Then we'll have the ducktail spoiler on the back of this as well, then the hot ring. And then continuing down, we have the drag, which actually look pretty awesome. And for the build of this vehicle, that might actually make a lot of sense on this. So I would say this car is basically going to be mainly a drag car, at least what many players are probably going to build this thing to. And then moving down to the suspension, guys, I actually decided to put this all the way down as well. Let's do the transmission on the car and or the turbo. Moving down to the wheels now, so for this I would say is going to be a pretty easy decision. I did decide to go with something from the muscle category on this car. I would say it will most likely fit this thing very nicely because of the way this car is. I don't think like something like a super wheel on this car is going to look all that good. But for this vehicle, guys, I'm probably going to have to go with these on here. I think the Drag SPL fit it, and also kind of the name fits the car a good amount as well. So let's do black on there. So I would say with this setup, this car is definitely looking pretty sweet. And then finally, guys, in windows, all I did was I basically did a light smoke to it. I didn't want to go too insanely dark on that because I like being able to see the detail of the car just a little bit. But regardless, guys, I would say this thing is looking pretty awesome. I think a lot of players are going to like the Tulip for the most part. Those twin turbos look insane sticking out of the hood. But anyway, let's do an outside look of this vehicle right now and also take this thing on a quick test drive. And now moving over to the outside look of the Declasse Tulip here, guys, I would say this car is definitely pretty sweet. For example, these turbos sticking out of the front definitely look absolutely insane. There's one unfortunate flaw to this though, which I will show you guys here in a second with the engine sound, but at least it does look really cool how it actually is in the engine, and you can see the detail of the turbos there, which I do like that. Unfortunately, there's going to be one flaw there though, but besides that, I would say the detail of this car is pretty sweet. I would say the interior doesn't look all that bad for what this car actually is. And then moving over to the back of the car here, you guys will obviously see the parachute and or the wheelie bar as well, because this thing is going to be a drag car, which with this thing being a muscle car, by the way, guys, you can wheelie this thing very easily. So maybe having the wheelie bar in the back of this car might not be a bad idea. But overall, I would say this thing does look pretty dang sweet with this livery setup as well. And being able to do this turbo setup on the car, I do think is going to make it look that much better, even though there's going to be one issue with the sound of this car. And now moving over to the first person view in the new Declasse Tulip, I would say this thing does look pretty cool. It's not going to be insanely detailed in any way, but at least you do get to see those turbos, and they also are moving as well. But now besides all that, let's go take this M100 on a quick test drive around the city. So the first thing, guys, is you can obviously wheelie the car by holding down the handbrake and hitting the gas there, which I would say a lot of players do know this, but having that wheelie bar on the back of the car is probably going to make a huge difference with how this car is going to drive, because without it, the car is probably just going to fly up in the air kind of hilariously. But nonetheless, though, let's see how the M100 is going to drive right now. So with the big turbo sticking out of the hood, I would say this thing is going to look pretty awesome. But one thing I was talking about earlier is going to be the one flaw with the engine sound of the car. So if you guys do listen carefully, I would say it's going to sound like the car does have like a supercharger in it, even though you do have the big turbo sticking out of the hood, which I'm not really surprised about, because this is obviously not like Need for Speed or something where you can like change the sound of the engine and or, you know, have like the supercharger make more noise, or have like the turbo and or like customize it to what you guys actually have. So I'm not really upset about that, but I would say it might annoy some players having like turbos on the hood than hearing a supercharger. But besides that though, I would say the M100 is going to be pretty sweet for the most part, and do keep in mind guys, you're talking about this vehicle being close to $2 million once you actually upgrade it, so this car is definitely going to be on the expensive side. But now I did want to jump on the highway heading up to Blaine County to see how this car might drive on the highway. So even though this thing's kind of considered a drag vehicle, at least with the setup it has on it at the moment, I would say the handling in this vehicle is actually pretty dang good. So from what I have noticed guys, some vehicles do feel kind of twitchy on here when you're driving them, and it seems like the M100 doesn't really have that feeling with the analog stick, like the car doesn't want to lose itself. I would say that's going to be a big plus. I know a lot of players probably don't want to deal with that. So for example, going off this little side road then back on, even with how the car is set up, it wasn't having any issues at all. So obviously the big drag tires are probably going to be for show. But if I had to guess though, this thing being in the muscle class, I don't know if this car would actually keep up with something like the Hellfire, but it might get pretty dang close. I do believe that car is still going to be the fastest muscle car in the game. I could be wrong on that, but even with this car being a little bit slower than the Hellfire or some of the other muscle cars, I would say it's still going to be really fun to drive, at least what I have seen with it so far. For me personally guys, I would say the biggest thing about the M100 is probably going to be the customization. You really can make this car look really awesome and or like basically a drag car, which I do find this to be pretty cool. I would say the biggest setback of this vehicle is most likely going to be the price, because $1.6 million is almost in super and or sport car category. So now arriving over here by the tunnel in Blaine County, I really do like doing the top speed test over here. So one thing I do want to mention by the way guys, on my way over here in the Tulip, I was noticing this vehicle was hitting like 130 miles per hour with the odometer. Now unfortunately I do know the odometer on this game is probably not going to be the most accurate thing. I'm not on PC so I can't have like an actual thing showing me the speed of the car, but I would say for the most part this is probably going to be one of the faster muscle cars in the game, at least top end wise when getting up to that higher speed. I feel like this car is pretty dang good, and something that can do like 130 plus miles an hour is probably going to be better than many of the other muscle cars. So if you guys might have been wondering, should I get the Tulip? Is this car going to be worth it? Well, to be honest for me, I would say the biggest factor for me on this car is probably going to be the customization. I really do think it's pretty awesome. The engine sound is going to be a bit of a flaw with it being a supercharger type of sound with the turbo sticking out of the hood. At the same time though, I'm really not upset about the engine sound being like that, because at the end of the day this is GTA and I'm just glad a lot of different cars are on the game that you can customize and or mess around with. But I do want to know what you guys think about the Tulip in the comments below. Are you planning on grabbing this vehicle? And for $1.6 million, I would say it's going to be up there in price, but also for GTA Online, I would say it's probably going to be just about right.